Jared, thrown and slouched in his worn office chair, boots propped on the desk of his small mercenary agency outpost on Nexus 7. The distant alien sun cast purple shadows through the dusty windows, highlighting the scratches on his black stealth armor. He absently stroked his well-groomed dark beard, scrolling through potential contracts on his holopad. Another thrilling day of rescuing rich merchants' pets from sewage processors, he muttered, taking a swig from his coffee mug, the bitter liquid long since gone cold. The door chimed, then slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Jared's boots hit the floor as he straightened up, his trained eyes automatically assessing the visitor. She was striking, tall and lithe, with silvery skin that seemed to shimmer in the purple sunlight. Long white hair was pulled back in a high ponytail, and her black, futuristic outfit left little to the imagination. But it was her eyes that caught his attention, deep pools of midnight blue filled with a raw pain that made his chest tighten. "Welcome to Throne Security Solutions," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "What can I help you with?" "My name is Rua," she said, her voice carrying a melodic accent. "I need your help, Mr. Throne. I need justice." Jared leaned forward, clasping his hands on the desk. "Justice is a complicated thing out here on the rim. Why don't you tell me what happened?" Rua sank into the chair, her composure cracking slightly. "They killed my son. The Crimson Talon bandits. He was only 6 cycles old." Her hands clenched in her lap. "The authorities say there's nothing they can do, that it's outside their jurisdiction." Jared exhaled slowly. "I'm sorry for your loss, but we're not really in the revenge business. We handle security contracts, dangerous creature removal, rescue operations." "Please," she interrupted, leaning forward. "I have credits, more than enough. Her voice broke. "I can't let them get away with this. I can't." He studied her for a long moment, something in her eyes reminding him of his own reflection years ago, after losing his squad on Helios Prime, that same haunted desperation. "Tell me everything," he said finally. Over the next hour, Rua detailed how the Crimson Talons had raided her settlement, supposedly looking for valuable tech. Her son Kai had been caught in the crossfire. The local authorities, corrupted by bribes, had declared it an unfortunate accident. "I've tracked them to their base in the Obsidian Mountains," she finished, "but I can't take them alone." Jared stood, walking to the window. The purple sun was setting, casting long shadows across the dusty street below. "This isn't a simple job. The Talons are well-armed, well-funded. Going after them could bring serious heat down on both of us." "I understand the risks," she turned back to her. "Do you? Because once we start this, there's no going back. And revenge, it doesn't bring anyone back. Trust me on that. I don't need lectures on morality, Mr. Throne. I need someone who can help me make them pay." Jared ran a hand through his dark hair, already knowing he was going to regret this. "Fine, but we do this my way. No unnecessary risks, no wild revenge schemes. We gather intel first, plan carefully, then strike when the time is right." Relief flooded her features. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," he warned. "This could still get us both killed." Rua stood, extending her hand. "Then at least we'll die pursuing justice." Jared took her hand, noting how cool her silver skin felt against his. "Let's try to avoid the dying part. Meet me tomorrow at dawn, we'll start tracking their movements." After she left, Jared slumped back in his chair, already questioning his decision. He pulled up everything he could find on the Crimson Talons. Their known associates, favorite hunting grounds, typical tactics. The more he read, the more his gut told him this was a bad idea, but something about Rua's story nagged at him. The Talons were brutal, but they usually avoided civilian casualties. Bad for business, a child's death seemed out of character. Computer, access settlement records for the past month. Look for any unusual activity around the time of the raid. The AI hummed to life. Processing. Alert, multiple data anomalies detected. Settlement security logs show signs of tampering. Jared leaned forward. "What kind of tampering?" Approximately 47% of surveillance footage from the incident has been deleted or corrupted. Remaining footage shows significant temporal inconsistencies. Someone's trying to hide something, he muttered. Question is, what? The purple sun had fully set now, leaving his office in darkness, broken only by the soft glow of his holoscreen. He pulled up the settlement schematics, studying possible entry and exit routes. If this was more than a simple raid gone wrong, he needed to be prepared for anything. His comm unit chimed. An encrypted message from one of his contacts in the settlement security force. Watch your back on this one. Throne. There's more going on than a grieving mother. The Talons were hired by someone with serious pull. Don't dig too deep, unless you're ready for what you'll find. Jared deleted the message, his jaw tightening. He'd expected complications, but political intrigue wasn't his specialty. Still, he'd given his word. Tomorrow he and Rua would begin their hunt and maybe find some answers along the way. He just hoped those answers wouldn't get them both killed. The next morning found Jared and Rua crouched in the maintenance tunnels beneath the settlement's security headquarters. The air was thick with the smell of recycled atmosphere and industrial lubricants. Jared's black stealth armor helped him blend with the shadows, while Rua's silver skin seemed to absorb the dim emergency lighting. The central server room is 2 levels up, Jared whispered, consulting his holomap. Security's heaviest during shift change. Hey, that's our window. Rua nodded, her midnight blue eyes reflecting the soft glow of his display. How long? 20 minutes. He studied her profile, noting how her white hair caught the light. You sure you're ready for this? Once we start digging, there's no telling what we'll uncover. She turned to face him, their faces inches apart in the narrow tunnel. I've been ready since the moment they took my son. Her breath was cool against his skin, carrying a faint scent like winter frost. Jared forced himself to focus on the mission, ignoring the way his pulse quickened at her proximity. Right? Follow my lead. Stay in the shadows. And I know how to move quietly, Mr. Throne, she interrupted, a hint of amusement in her voice. My people were hunters long before we reached the stars. Jared, he corrected automatically. If we're going to be breaking and entering together, we might as well be on a first-name basis. Her lips curved slightly. Jared, then. They made their way through the tunnels, timing their movements to the rhythm of the facility above. Jared couldn't help but admire the fluid grace with which Rua moved, like liquid mercury in the darkness. She caught him watching once and raised an eyebrow but said nothing. The server room's access point was exactly where his contact had indicated. Jared made quick work of the security panel while Rua kept watch. Inside, banks of quantum processors hummed with barely contained power. Watch the door, he instructed, plugging his decryption module into the main terminal. This shouldn't take long. Rua positioned herself by the entrance but kept glancing back at him. Your technology, it's impressive. Most humans I've met rely on brute force rather than finesse. That's because most humans you've met probably weren't raised by a master slicer, Jared replied, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. My mother could hack a corporate network with nothing but a modified datapad and spite. She died in the Helios Prime massacre along with my whole squad. The words came out before he could stop them. Something about Rua made him want to share things he usually kept buried. She moved closer, resting a cool hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Got it? Jared interrupted, grateful for the distraction. Pulling up the deleted footage now. The holoscreen flickered to life, showing multiple angles of the settlement on the night of the raid. Jared's eyes narrowed as he watched the Crimson Talons move through the streets with military precision. Wait! Rua leaned in, her body pressing against his back. Those aren't the same men who attacked us. The Talons I saw were different. Jared nodded grimly. Because these aren't really Crimson Talons? Look at their formation, their tactics. These are professional soldiers trying to look like bandits. But why? Who would? Rua's question cut off as footsteps echoed from the corridor. Jared quickly transferred the data to his secure drive and disconnected. They pressed themselves into the shadows as a security patrol passed by the door. We need to move, he whispered. Now, They made it back to the tunnels just as alarms began blaring above. Someone had discovered their intrusion. The maintenance shaft seemed even narrower as they rushed through it, bodies brushing against each other in the darkness. They emerged 2 blocks away, ducking into an abandoned warehouse Jared used as a safe house. Both were breathing hard, more from adrenaline than exertion. That was... Roi started. Close, Jared finished, running a hand through his hair. Too close. She stepped closer, her silver skin practically glowing in the dim light filtering through the warehouse's broken windows. I was going to say exciting. Jared became acutely aware of how little space separated them. The air seemed to crackle with unspoken tension. Roi, he said, his voice rougher than intended. We should focus on... She pressed a finger to his lips, silencing him. But right now... Her other hand traced the edge of his jaw, cool fingers sliding into his beard. Right now, I don't want to think about revenge or conspiracies or anything else. This could complicate things, he warned, even as his hands found her waist. Everything's already complicated, she whispered. At least this would be a pleasant sort of complicated. Jared had a dozen reasons why this was a bad idea, but when Roi pulled him down to her, all those reasons evaporated like morning frost under a purple sun. Later, as they lay tangled together on his emergency bedroll, Roi traced patterns on his chest. Your heart beats so fast, she marveled. So much stronger than my people's. Human hearts have to work harder, he murmured, running his fingers through her silver-white hair. We burn hotter, live fiercer. Is that why you taste like starfire? She asked, pressing her cool lips to his throat. Before he could answer, his secure calm chirped. The message was brief but urgent. Meeting tonight, the truth about the raid. Come alone. Roi read it over his shoulder, her body tensing. It's a trap, probably, Jared agreed, sitting up. But it might be our only chance to find out what really happened to your son. She caught his hand, intertwining their fingers. Not alone. Whatever we face it together. Jared looked at their joined hands, his tan skin against her silver, and nodded. Together. The meeting point was an abandoned or processing facility in the settlement's industrial district. Jared and Roi approached cautiously, his black stealth armor blending with the shadows, while her silver skin caught hints of starlight through the broken dome above. Something feels wrong, Roi whispered, her midnight blue eyes scanning the catwalks above. Jared nodded, his hand resting on his pulse pistol. The facility's layout was eerily similar to the one on Helios Prime where he'd lost his squad, too similar to be a coincidence. A figure emerged from behind a rusted processing vat. Hello, Throne. Been a while. Jared's blood ran cold. He knew that voice. Commander Rexus, the alien, stepped into the light, tall, reptilian with iridescent scales that shifted colors like oil on water. His cybernetic eye glowed a malevolent red. You remember me? Good. Reese's mandibles clicked in amusement. Though I go by Warlord now. You died on Helios Prime, Jared growled. You saw what I wanted you to see. Reese's good eye fixed on Roi. Just like this lovely creature saw what we wanted her to see the night her son died. Roi tensed beside Jared. What are you talking about? The raid wasn't random, my dear. Your son's death was necessary. A catalyst to bring you to this human. He spat the word like a curse. Though I must admit, you two developed feelings for each other faster than expected. Movement in the shadows, they were surrounded. Why? Jared demanded, his mind racing through escape routes. Why go through all this? Because humans are a plague? Rexus snarled. Your species spreads across the galaxy like a virus, adapting, surviving, thriving where you shouldn't. Even our best genetic engineering can't match your raw potential. He gestured to Roi. Case in point. Roi's hand went to her abdomen, realization dawning. You knew. We would. Compatible genetics are so rare between species. Rexus continued. Yet humans can breed with nearly anyone. Your hybrid children inherit the best of both worlds and your damnable human resilience. His cybernetic eye pulsed brighter. We needed to study this up close. Your previous child was unsuitable for our purposes. Jared felt Roi's rage building beside him, cold as deep space. You murdered my son to set up a breeding experiment? For the greater good. The hybrid you now carry will help us understand how to eliminate this human advantage. Rexus raised his hand. Take them. Several things happened at once. Jared threw down a flashbang grenade, as Roi unleashed a sonic blast, an ability of her species he hadn't known about. Mercenaries stumbled, disoriented, as Jared and Roi bolted for the maintenance tunnels. Your mother taught you well. Throne. Rexus's voice echoed behind them. But she didn't teach you everything. The tunnel ahead began to seal. Jared pushed Roi through just before the blast door slammed shut, trapping him on the other side. Jared! Her voice was muffled through the metal. Run! He shouted back. Protect our child. I'll find another way. He turned to face Rexus and his men, pulse pistol raised. So you faked your death and spent years setting this up. I'm almost flattered. Your species' arrogance never ceases to amaze me. Rexus sneered. Did you really think she chose you by accident? We engineered this entire scenario. Maybe, Jared admitted, backing toward a pressure valve. But here's the thing about humans. We're really good at improvising. He shot the valve, releasing a burst of superheated steam into the chamber. Alarms blared as the facility's ancient system began to overload. Jared dove through the scalding cloud, hearing Rexus's enraged roar behind him. His stealth armor protected him from the worst of the heat, but he could feel blisters forming on his exposed skin. He sprinted through the maze of corridors, relying on instinct and half-remembered evacuation plans from similar facilities. Behind him, he heard Rexus's forces in pursuit, their boots thundering on metal grating. A maintenance shaft appeared on his left, a tight squeeze, but his only option. Jared wedged himself in just as plasma bolts scorched the wall where he'd been standing. You can't escape, Throne. Rexus's voice echoed through the facility. Even if you survive, we'll find you. Your offspring will be ours. Jared ignored him, focusing on navigating the cramped shaft. His mother's voice echoed in his memory. Always know your exit routes, kiddo, and always have a backup plan. He reached into his armor and pulled out a remote detonator connected to the charges he'd planted earlier, just in case. Sometimes paranoia paid off. The explosion rocked the entire facility. Jared emerged from the shaft into chaos. Fires, collapsing walkways, screaming mercenaries. Through the smoke, he caught glimpses of Rexus's forces retreating, carrying their wounded commander. Jared made his way to the rendezvous point he and Roi had established, hoping she'd remembered. The small storage unit was untouched by the destruction, and inside, took you long enough, Roi said, lowering her stolen rifle. Her eyes softened as she took in his injuries. You're hurt. Worth it to see the look on Rexus's face. Jared winced as she applied a cooling pad to his burns. I'm sorry about your son. If I'd known Rexus was behind this. She pressed her cool fingers to his lips. You couldn't have known. But now we do. Her other hand rested on her abdomen. And we'll make them pay. Not just for my son, but for your squad too. Jared pulled her close, feeling her rapid heartbeat against his chest. They'll be hunting us now. Both of us and the baby. Let them try. Roi's voice was steel wrapped in silk. They wanted to study human resilience. They're about to get a first-hand lesson. He kissed her then, tasting starfire and vengeance on her lips. They had a long fight ahead, but for the first time since Helios Prime, Jared felt truly alive. We need to move, he said finally. I know some people off-world who can help us, and disappear for a while. Running away? Roi raised an eyebrow. Strategic retreat, Jared corrected with a grin. Give them time to think they've won. Then we'll show them why humans have a reputation for being unstoppable. Dawn painted Nexus 7 spaceport in shades of purple and crimson, and as Jared and Roi made their way through the crowded terminals, his burns still ached beneath fresh synth skin patches, but adrenaline kept him alert. Roi walked close beside him, her silver skin concealed beneath a hooded cloak. "Transport leaves in 20 minutes, Jared murmured, scanning the crowd. "Assuming we make it that far." "Your optimism is charming," Rua replied, her midnight blue eyes twinkling despite the tension. She pressed against him as they passed a security checkpoint, her cool touch sending electricity through his veins. "Though I must admit, danger seems to suit you." Jared fought to keep his focus. "Careful. Last time you looked at me like that, we ended up with an unexpected passenger." His hand brushed her abdomen briefly. "Unexpected, but not unwanted," she whispered, making his heart race. "Your species' virility is impressive. Less flirting, more surviving," he growled, though he couldn't help grinning. Trust a human-alien romance to get complicated by interspecies fertility. His mother would have laughed herself sick. The spaceport's main concourse stretched before them, a soaring expanse of transparent durasteel, revealing the purple sky above, too exposed for Jared's taste. But their ship waited on the other side. Movement caught his eye, a flash of iridescent scales. "Company," he warned. "Multiple hostiles," Rua confirmed, her enhanced senses picking up what he couldn't. "They're herding us toward the cargo section." "Good. Less civilians." Jared adjusted their course slightly, leading them toward a maintenance corridor, ready to show them why picking a fight with a pregnant woman is a bad idea, especially one carrying humanity's finest. She smirked, her hand dropping to the concealed blaster under her cloak. "Always." They made it 3 more steps before all hell broke loose. Plasma bolts sizzled past their heads as Rexus's mercenaries opened fire. Civilians screamed and scattered as Jared and Rua dove behind a pillar. Security alarms blared, but Jared knew they'd been compromised. No help coming from that quarter. 10 enemy, Rua reported, returning fire with deadly precision. "No, 11. Rexus is here." "Of course, he is." Jared dropped 2 mercenaries with his pulse pistol. Couldn't resist seeing his experiment up close. They fought their way through the cargo section, using shipping containers for cover. Rua's natural agility, combined with her combat training, made her a devastating fighter, even more so now that she was protecting more than just herself. Jared found himself constantly distracted by her fluid grace. "Eyes on the enemy, darling," she teased, after catching him staring. "Can't help it," he shot back, taking down another mercenary. "You're glowing. That's the pregnancy. That's all you." A sonic blast from above interrupted their banter. Jared tackled Rua behind a fuel tank just as Rexus descended on mechanical wings, his cybernetic eye blazing. "How sickeningly sweet," the warlord sneered. The human and his alien mate fighting side by side. "You realize that child will be an abomination. The only abomination here is your fashion sense," Rua retorted, making Jared snort. "Those wings look ridiculous." Rexus snarled and fired another sonic blast, shattering crates around them. "That child belongs to us. Its genetic makeup could be the key to humanity's weakness. Or humanity's strength," Jared countered, rolling to new cover. "Ever considered that your whole species is a cosmic accident? You shouldn't be able to adapt so quickly, to breed with other races, to survive where you have no right to?" Rexus's voice rose to a shriek. "You're nothing but lucky animals. Lucky enough to kick your scaly ass," Jared muttered, then raised his voice. "Hey Rexus, speaking of luck," he fired at the fuel tank they'd been hiding behind earlier. Rexus's eyes widened as he realized his mistake. He landed right next to it. The explosion sent the warlord crashing through a cargo container. His remaining mercenaries scattered as secondary explosions chain-reacted through the cargo section. Jared grabbed Rua's hand and ran. "Our ship's not going to wait much longer," he panted as they sprinted across the landing pad. "Neither is Rexus," Rua warned, glancing back. The warlord was already emerging from the wreckage, his mechanical wings sparking, but functional. They reached the ship's boarding ramp just as another sonic blast tore through the air. Jared shoved Rua inside, then turned to face Rexus one last time. "You want to know humanity's real strength?" he called out. "We don't just survive. We protect what's ours. He threw his last grenade not at Rexus, but at the landing pad's fuel lines. The resulting explosion sent the warlord tumbling backward as Jared dove into the ship. "Go!" he shouted to the pilot. The ship lifted off as fire engulfed the landing pad, Rexus's enraged roar fading behind them. In their private cabin, Roi pulled Jared close, her cool skin soothing his fresh burns. That was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Why not both? He kissed her deeply, still riding the adrenaline high. "It's the human in you," she laughed against his lips. "Is that also why you can't keep your hands off me, even in the middle of a firefight? Blame evolution. Danger makes us?" He trailed off as her fingers traced patterns on his chest. "Show me," she whispered. Later, as they lay tangled in the cabin's narrow bunk, Roi placed his hand on her abdomen. "I can feel it already. The strength like a star being born." Jared smiled, marveling at how this mission for revenge had transformed into something so much more. Rexus doesn't understand. Human adaptability isn't a weakness. It's hope. Every child like ours is proof that the universe wants life to find a way. Very philosophical for a merc, she teased. "I contain multitudes." He pulled her closer. "Speaking of which, we should probably have discussed names." A proximity alarm cut him off. On the cabin's view screen, 3 hostile ships appeared in pursuit. "Rexus?" Roi asked, already reaching for her clothes. "Probably," Jared grinned as he suited up. Ready for round 2, her answering smile was fierce and beautiful. Always. The ship's engines thrummed as they pushed through the void. 3 hostile vessels in close pursuit. Jared studied the tactical display, his jaw tightening as he recognized the attack pattern. "They're herding us toward the asteroid field," he muttered. "Standard Helios Prime tactics." Roi leaned over his shoulder, her silver skin reflecting the console's glow. "You seem unsurprised." "Because our pilot's flying exactly where they want us to go." Jared drew his pulse pistol. "Isn't that right, Thex?" The pilot's tentacles tensed on the controls. "Took you long enough to figure it out, human." "Actually, I knew the moment we took off," Jared replied, keeping his weapon steady. "You're using the same flight patterns as Rexus's personal shuttle. The question is, why help us escape, just to betray us now?" "Because Rexus needed you away from civilian witnesses." Thex's multifaceted eyes glinted. "And he needed to ensure the hybrid survives." Roi's hand went protectively to her abdomen. "You're one of his scientists, the leading geneticist on human adaptability," she confirmed proudly. "Your child is the breakthrough we've been waiting for. The perfect test subject." Jared felt Roi tense beside him, her rage radiating like cold fire. "Our child is not your experiment. You don't understand the significance." Thex's words cut off as the ship shuddered under enemy fire. "Shields at 60%. The computer warned. Jared made a split-second decision. "Roi, take weapons. I'll fly." "You can't," Thex began. "Watch me." Jared stunned the pilot with a precise shot, then dragged him from the chair. "My mother didn't just teach me hacking." He slid into the pilot's seat as Roi took the weapons station. The pursuing ships were closing fast, their energy signatures matching Rexus's personal fleet. "Ready to show them why humans are the galaxy's best pilots?" Jared called out, his hands dancing across the controls. "Ready to show them why they shouldn't threaten a mother's child?" Roi responded, powering up the weapons. Jared grinned and threw the ship into a spiral dive. The asteroid field loomed ahead, a dense maze of spinning rocks and frozen debris. Perfect hunting ground for someone who'd grown up racing through Earth's Kuiper belt. The first pursuer fired a spread of plasma torpedoes. Jared rolled their ship through a gap between 2 asteroids, letting the explosions fragment the rocks behind them. Roi used the debris field to mask her own shot, catching 1 enemy ship's engine housing. "1 down," she announced as the damaged vessel peeled away. "2 to go," Jared replied, weaving through the field's outer edge. "And here comes the fun part." He cut power to the main engines, letting momentum carry them into a tumbling spin that looked like they'd been hit. The pursuing ships took the bait, moving in for the kill. Now, Roi fired as Jared kicked in the auxiliary thrusters, catching both ships in a devastating crossfire. One exploded immediately. The other spun away, venting atmosphere. "That's my girl," Jared whooped, but his celebration was cut short as new alarms blared. "Incoming ship," Roi warned. "Much bigger. It's Rexus's command vessel." The massive warship emerged from hyperspace like a predator surfacing from dark waters. Its weapons arrays glowed with charged energy. "Surrender." Rexus's voice crackled over the comm. "You've impressed me, but this ends now. That child belongs to the future of galactic science." Jared looked at Roi, saw the fierce determination in her eyes that had first drawn him to her. "Counter-offer," he transmitted back. "Go fuck yourself." He punched the ship into a steep dive, aiming for the densest part of the asteroid field. Rexus's vessel opened fire, its superior weapons turning space rocks into deadly shrapnel. "We can't outrun them forever," Roi said, picking off pursuing fighters. "Don't need to." Jared pointed to a massive asteroid tumbling ahead. "See that fissure? Perfect size for our ship, not so much for theirs." "You're insane," she laughed, but her eyes sparkled with excitement. "You love it." He winked at her. "Hold on tight." They threaded the ship through the asteroid's crack with meters to spare, emerging on the other side just as Rexus's ship tried to follow. The larger vessel's shields scraped against the rock, creating a cascade of energy feedback. "Fire everything," Jared ordered. Roi unleashed their remaining weapons directly into the destabilized shield matrix. The resulting explosion shattered the asteroid and sent Rexus's ship spinning away. Its hull breached in multiple sections. "That's going to leave a mark," Jared observed with satisfaction. "Speaking of marks," Roi rose from her station, moving toward him with predatory grace. "That was incredibly attractive? The flying or the explosions? Everything." She straddled his lap in the pilot's chair, her cool fingers tracing his jaw. "You humans, and your ability to turn impossible situations into victories, it's intoxicating." Behind them, their captive pilot stirred. "You don't understand what you're protecting," Thex groaned. "That child could be the key to understanding human genetic superiority," Roi said, not taking her eyes off Jared. "Our child is the key to something far more important. Love between species, hope for the future, things your science can't quantify." Jared pulled her closer, breathing in her starfire scent. "Pretty philosophical for a revenge mission. I'm learning from the best." She kissed him deeply, making him forget about everything else for a moment. The ship's computer chimed. Multiple vessels detected, approaching at high speed. "Rexus?" Jared asked reluctantly, breaking the kiss. "Negative. Sapiens Coalition signature detected. Emergency response to our distress beacon." "Distress beacon?" Roi looked puzzled. Jared grinned. "Set it to activate automatically if we survived that last maneuver. Told you I had a backup plan." "My brilliant human," she murmured, kissing him again as coalition ships surrounded them in a protective formation. Thex watched them with his multifaceted eyes. "You really don't care that you're part of something unprecedented, an evolutionary miracle?" "Oh, we care," Jared replied, holding Roi close. "We just understand what the real miracle is. Not the genetics, but the love that made them possible." The Coalition Medical Bay hummed with advanced diagnostic equipment as Dr. Reeves studied the holographic display of Roi's scans. Jared stood beside her examination bed, his hand intertwined with hers. "This is remarkable," the doctor muttered, adjusting his spectacles. "The fetus is developing at nearly triple the normal rate of either human or Argentian pregnancies." "Argentian?" Jared questioned, glancing at Roi. "My species," she explained, her silver skin glowing under the medical lights. "We're called the people of the silver stars in your language." "The hybrid's genetic structure is fascinating," Dr. Reeves continued. "It's not just combining traits, it's actively optimizing them. I've never seen anything like it. Jared felt Rua's hand tighten in his. Is our child healthy? Extraordinarily so. The human adaptive genes are working in perfect harmony with Argentian regenerative capabilities. At this rate, you could be holding your baby within weeks, rather than months. The doctor's words were interrupted by a facility-wide alert. Warning. Unknown vessels approaching. Hostile signatures detected. Jared was already moving. How many? Multiple capital ships. The computer responded. Leading vessel identified as Rexus's flagship, extensively repaired and upgraded. Stubborn bastard, Jared muttered. He turned to Rua, who was already getting up despite the doctor's protests. You should stay here. Not a chance, she pressed against him, her cool skin igniting familiar fires. We fight together, always. He kissed her quickly, then faced Dr. Reeves. Get everything you have on our child's development to a secure server. If Rexus wants research data, let's make sure he gets the wrong kind. The facility shook as the first wave of attacks hit the outer shields. Jared and Rua raced through corridors filled with rushing coalition personnel, their intimate knowledge of each other's movements making them flow like quicksilver through the chaos. They reached the command center just as Admiral Smith was organizing the defense. The grizzled veteran nodded at their arrival. Throne, your reputation for attracting trouble remains intact. It's part of my charm, Jared replied, studying the tactical display. Rexus's fleet had them surrounded, a dozen capital ships bristling with weapons. He's not here to capture us this time. No, Rua agreed, unconsciously moving to protect her abdomen. He's here to eliminate what he can't control. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. The hybrid child. A child that proves humans aren't just compatible with other species, Jared explained, but capable of producing offspring stronger than either parent. Rexus sees it as a threat to his vision of engineered perfection. Then let's show him some human perfection. Smith grinned. We've been developing new weapons, specifically designed to counter his enhanced soldiers. Care to help us test them? Another explosion rocked the facility, outer shields at 40%. Time to go to work. Jared checked his upgraded pulse rifle. Admiral, can you keep his fleet busy while we deal with boarding parties? With pleasure. Smith turned to his crew. Battle stations. Show these bastards why humanity reached the stars. Jared and Rua moved through the facility, coordinating with coalition forces to set up defensive positions. Every few minutes she would pause, pressing a hand to her stomach. The baby? Jared asked, worry growing. Stronger by the minute, she smiled. Like it knows we're about to fight and wants to help. That's our kid, all right? He pulled her into an alcove as troops rushed past. Listen, about what the doctor said. That we'll be parents in weeks instead of months. Her midnight blue eyes sparkled. Scared, terrified, he admitted, but also incredibly excited. She answered by kissing him deeply, her cool lips burning against his. I never thought I'd feel this way again after losing my son. But it's different better. Boarding craft detected. The computer's warning broke their moment. Multiple breaches in sectors 7 through 12. Ready to show Rexus why he shouldn't have pissed off a pregnant woman, Jared asked, readying his weapon. And her incredibly attractive human mate, Rua added with a predatory smile. Always. They moved as one through the facility, their intimate knowledge of each other's fighting styles making them devastating against Rexus's boarding parties. Where Jared was raw power and precision, Rua was fluid grace and deadly accuracy. Together, they were unstoppable. Fall back, they heard one of Rexus's commanders shout. These humans, they're not normal. You're damn right we're not. Jared called back, dropping another enhanced soldier. We're better. The facility shuddered as coalition ships engaged Rexus's fleet. Through the viewports, they could see spectacular explosions as Smith's new weapons tore through supposedly superior alien technology. Primary target located. Rexus's voice echoed through captured comm channels. All forces, converge on Medical Bay. The research data. Roi realized. He still thinks that's what matters. Then let's give him what he wants. Jared grinned. Admiral, can you hear me? Go ahead, Throne. Time for that trick we discussed. Think you can give us a clear shot at his flagship? Already working on it. Smith's voice held fierce satisfaction. 2 minutes. They fought their way back to the medical bay, arriving just as Rexus himself burst through the doors, his cybernetic parts gleaming with new upgrades. Finally, the warlord snarled. No more games, no more chases. This ends now. Couldn't agree more. Jared raised his rifle, ready to show him what real perfection looks like. Rexus laughed. You still don't understand. You're nothing but genetic accidents. Your species should never have achieved what it has. That's where you're wrong, Roi said, her voice cold as space. Humans achieved everything precisely because they weren't engineered to be perfect. They had to work for it, fight for it, earn every step forward. And now, Jared added, we're going to show you exactly what that means. The final battle for their future was about to begin. The medical bay alarms blared as Rexus charged forward, his cybernetic enhancements whirring with deadly purpose. Jared met him head-on, while Roi provided covering fire, their movements synchronized through countless battles and intimate moments together. Warning, power core destabilizing. The facility's computer announced, critical failure imminent. You'll all die here, Rexus snarled, his mechanical arms morphing into razor-sharp blades. Your genetic abomination will never see starlight. Jared blocked a strike with his rifle. Our child isn't an abomination. It's the future, something you're too blind to see. Roi's shot caught Rexus in his organic shoulder, making him stumble. The only abomination here is your fear of what you can't control. The warlord's cybernetic eye pulsed with rage. Control. I've spent centuries perfecting my species through science, and you humans achieve in decades what took us millennia. Because we don't try to control evolution, Jared grunted, landing a solid hit to Rexus's midsection. We embrace it. The facility shuddered as another explosion rocked the structure. Admiral Smith's voice crackled through the comm. Power core is going critical. You've got 5 minutes before this whole place becomes a new star. Rexus laughed maniacally. Perfect. If I can't have your genetic secrets, no one will. He launched himself at Roi, but Jared intercepted, taking a deep slash across his chest armor. The pain only fueled his determination. Roi, the console, he shouted, grappling with Rexus. Transfer the real data. She understood immediately, fingers flying across the medical bay's controls. The fake research data they'd prepared began uploading to Rexus's systems through his cybernetic interfaces. No! The warlord roared, realizing too late what was happening. The corrupted data crashed through his neural networks, disrupting his enhanced capabilities. Jared seized the opportunity, driving his fist into Rexus's organic eye. That's for Roi's son. Another strike shattered the cybernetic eye. That's for my squad on Helios Prime. A final blow sent Rexus crashing into the medical equipment. And that's for threatening our child. Jared. Roi called urgently. The core. 2 minutes to critical failure. They ran for the emergency shuttles, leaving Rexus struggling with his malfunctioning cybernetics. The corridors were chaos as coalition personnel evacuated. Admiral, get your people out. Jared ordered through the comm already done. Throne. Give Rexus hell. They reached the shuttle bay just as another explosion rocked the facility. Through the viewport, they watched coalition ships jumping to safety, while Rexus's fleet remained trapped by their own tight formation. 30 seconds to core breach. Jared pulled Roi into the nearest shuttle, his hands flying over the controls. As they launched, she grabbed his arm. Wait, look! On their scanner, a single life pod was launching from the medical bay. Rexus trying to escape. Oh no you don't, Jared growled, targeting the pod with their shuttle weapons. No, Roi said softly, placing her hand over his. Let him live with his failure. Let him watch as our child proves everything he feared about human potential. Jared looked at her in amazement, seeing not just the warrior who'd sought revenge, but the mother who'd found hope. He kissed her deeply as their shuttle rocketed away from the facility. Behind them, the power core breached. The explosion consumed Rexus's fleet in a spectacular cascade of light, while his pod was thrown clear by the blast wave. "Think we'll see him again?" Jared asked as they set course for the nearest coalition base. "Perhaps, but next time." Rua gasped suddenly, her hands going to her abdomen. "What's wrong?" She smiled radiantly. "Nothing's wrong, the baby." I think all this excitement accelerated things even further. Jared's eyes widened. "You mean, hope you're ready to be a father sooner than we thought?" 3 weeks later, the Coalition medical ship's observation deck offered a spectacular view of the nebula they were passing through. Jared stood at the window, holding his newborn son, while Rua rested in a nearby chair. "He has your eyes," she said softly, watching them with obvious joy. "But my coloring." Their son's skin had a subtle silver sheen, while his hair was the same dark brown as his father's. His eyes opened, showed the same determination Jared saw in the mirror every day. "What shall we call him?" Jared asked, still amazed by how perfectly their genes had combined. "In my language, there is a name, Nixus. It means born of starlight and storm." She rose to join them, wrapping her arms around Jared from behind. "Like how we found each other." "Nixus Throne." Jared tested the name, feeling his son grip his finger with surprising strength. "It's perfect. The first of many," Rua murmured, kissing his neck. "After all, humans are known for their reproductive capabilities. Is that your way of saying you want more?" "It's my way of saying I want everything with you." Her midnight blue eyes sparkled with promise. "The revenge that brought us together gave me something far greater than justice. It gave me love, a future, hope, and one hell of a story to tell our son." Watching the nebula's colors dance across the stars, a family forged in fire and bound by love. Somewhere out there, Rexus was watching humanity continuing to defy his expectations. But here in this moment, all that mattered was the miracle they had created together. Nixus, already showing the best of both his heritages, a living proof that love could bridge any distance, heal any wound, and create something more perfect than science could ever engineer. "Ready for our next adventure?" Jared asked, holding his family close. Rua's answer was a kiss that tasted of starfire and promise, while their son reached for the infinite possibilities ahead.